Hello, dear seekers of truth and light. This video is being made in response to John Newbrough making the proclamation in newspapers that Saphah is the most important book of Oahspe. He said this in 1883, March. It is a ridiculous statement when you consider the different resurrection eras of the gods who were raising, uplifting mankind through various cycles and stages of spiritual advancement. The histories of the heavens, of the bondage of false gods, which Saphah seeks to promote, which is exactly what Oahspe was against. And when you consider that all the great doctrines found in the Book of Judgment, the Book of Inspiration, the Book of Discipline, these are timeless ideals which lead mankind forward unto the new era of Cosmon, where all men and women are brothers and sisters, the children of our one true Creator. And he has the audacity to claim that a hodgepodge of fake Masonic stolen symbols and crummy mind-numbing, mind-controlling rites are somehow the best Oahspe has to offer. That's not true in any sense. Let's seek the truth. Let's be liberated. Let's consider. In the March 10th edition, published in the Banner of Light, Newbrough went all in on saying that Saphah was the most important writing in the Book of Oahspe, that is the Egyptian rites and all the homage to the false gods and the history of the false gods and the rites dedicated to the false gods. And he made some ridiculous claims about people asking for how he got the money for publishing Oahspe, and that somehow people were asking for him to somehow have these same spirits bring them money, which is ridiculous because it never happened in the first place. In fact, Miss Thompson was the one who paid for the publishing of Oahspe, and certainly no one was asking for money, but it was a way to get publicity in his mind. And so the reason Saphah was important because it made him the master of the movement. There wouldn't be free communication with everyone directly with the Creator. There wouldn't be like this surge of good works. It would just be practicing these rites in Saphah with their passwords and everything. He would be the headmaster, and so he would rule his little realm as a false prophet, a high prophet. And of course, Newbrough took passages from Oahspe and he put it in Saphah, or he paraphrased them so that people would work, that the concept of good works was in Saphah, and that's why he was saying, well, look, Saphah has all these great passages about helping others, doing good works, so that's why it's the most important book. And oh, by the way, Saphah also has extensive rites for being initiated into the Oahspe Faithist Lodge, to all the lodges, and if you get initiated, of course, Saphah is important because it shows there is a very controlled spiritual promotion from within based on the rites you could complete. And by the way you showed your respect and praise for the leaders in that movement, especially for him. So that was the trick. Do good works, because Saphah says you do that, and perform the rites, because that's how the Masons rolled. They wanted the rites were a kind of means of control, just as the false religions, whether it was Catholicism or Islam or whatever, the rites are there to maintain control over their members. And so Newbrough was taking the same page from the false gods. That's why it's so horrendous what Newbrough did. He simply replaced the false religions with his own false religion because it would give him power and authority. And that's the great tragedy. And so it's true that Saphah had some passages which promoted good works and doing good things and becoming a good person. But of course, the rest of Oahspe has far more. I mean, the Book of Judgment, the Book of Inspiration, all the real doctrinal books are promoting the idea that you live your life to help others, to uplift the poor and the distressed, which is a wonderful message, of course. And the kindergarten homes are a reflection of that, which Newbrough was seeking to get off the ground, but of course because he wanted to be the head of a new religion. And of course, if you read all the historical accounts, whether it's in the heavens or on the earth in Oahspe, again, the message is basically the same. People need to be less selfish and to work for the good of others and help begin a new kind of utopia in this world where people live for the betterment of their community and everyone within their reach, to help them attain a higher spiritual consciousness, to become vegetarian, to be able to communicate with the next world by developing their spiritual senses, by taking charge of their own spiritual resurrection, by being stronger, with more fortitude about the choices they make in life, refraining from drinking alcohol, from smoking, from doing drugs, from indulging in lust, and so on. So these are all good goals, but they're in the rest of Oahspe. You don't have to. Saphah is just basically copying and pasting through Newbrough's efforts. And see, here's the problem. So it's a bait and switch, basically. So Newbrough says, hey, guess what? When you go into Saphah, here's the rites, here's the Egyptian rites, here's the Osiris. There he is. And Osiris has a lot of, all these gods. The thing is, I can't believe Newbrough couldn't at least put some harmonious statements by these false gods, but instead he puts the really bad ones in, and maybe that's all they ever said, I suppose. But of course, we need to forget about these gods. We don't need to look at them or honor them. Instead, what we should be doing is just forgetting about them and putting our consciousness on the Creator alone. There's no need to even think about false gods anymore. This is the new age of Cosmon, right? We don't need to think about the Christian saints and popes and all the Trinity or anything, and the same would go for the other religions. We need to worship the Creator directly. But here we got Osiris saying, anyone who doesn't worship me, I'm going to destroy them with war. And it's a message of fear and the glorification of these false gods. I would say there's about maybe around 10 that are honored in the book of Saphah, and it's ridiculous. And of course, more than a few of these are in the actual rites that Newbrough had begun in his lodges, which is really, really regrettable and against the very principles of Oahspe. And so here's another example of a false god, Mithra. Mithra has been very popular throughout the past few thousand years. Well, in the sense of in that it never really went away. It's been around since the time of when the Zarathustrians were going wrong. As you know, there's generally a good prophet that starts a new spiritual path and eventually becomes taken over by Druges and other false gods. Well, Mithra is an example of that, a false god. It's something to do with the sun and being willing to fight to conquer the world, basically. And it's been the Roman religion, ancient Christianity, the Rosicrucians, and the sister secret societies of the Masons themselves. They honor Mithra, and again, it's the same old story. The reason these gods, false gods, demons, or demigods, the reason they're even being contemplated is because the Masons believe when they rub elbows with these mystical, magical beings, that somehow that's a sign that they're mystical and magical, and that they're powerful, and that they're going to control everything, and that they themselves are God and can do whatever they want. And that's basically the very wrong message the world needs to hear. We need to be attuning to the Creator, who is selfless love and selfless service. Instead, we've got all these vainglory costumes and radiant false gods who we're supposed to bow down to and lose our free will. Again, Saphah supports that. Another bad element of Saphah, which, again, I'm reminding everyone, Newbrough says Saphah is wonderful. It's the core of the Oahspe path. And yet we have Oahspe. This is a faith is right, where someone is supposed to stick their hand into fire to prove they've conquered the physical conditions and can basically do whatever they want. That there's such a depth that they can transcend all pain and all physical limitations. And I don't doubt this can be done. I'm sure it can be done. Newbrough's followers might even have achieved this. I can't really speak to that. But the point is, it's not a worthy spiritual goal. That's not what Oahspe really teaches us. That's what the secret societies and the Masons teach, that we're going to become these kind of magicians or something, where we go on for the really loud sounding and glorious aggrandizement kind of things. There'll be some kind of leader, master, priest who tells us what to do and what to think, and we'll be able to accomplish these miracles, and that somehow proves we're doing the right thing. No, it doesn't. You're better off sweeping the floor of the sick old woman. You're better off visiting people who are lonely and cheering them up. You're better off teaching people how to grow food for themselves so they won't go hungry, okay? Help the poor in that way. But this is like totally a detour that leads to hell. And Newbrough promoted it in Saphah. And there were like I said, there's like 10 or a dozen of these false gods mentioned in Saphah. And people kind of ignore it because it's so weird. You go, I don't know what the heck this is, so you just go on. But the truth is, these rites were practiced by Newbrough, and so he has this big connection with the basically hellish realms, demonic, and there's no reason we want the Oahspe movement connected, spiritually connected with the vibrations. Hongxi, why? This is my blood. Eat and drink. Eat the body of Hongxi, drink the blood. Yes, it's sort of a echo of what the Last Supper was, and who cares if it is or isn't. At any rate, there was this concept in one of the rites of going straight ahead and being pierced by knives and swords, and to show that you had attained some kind of adept mastery of the physical laws of the universe. And I don't doubt that such things can be accomplished, like I said before, but it doesn't mean we should be doing it. It'd be much more miraculous and wonderful if people would unite to create a true utopia of service unto everyone, to the world, to the homeless children. That should be the real goal. This is just looking at something really spectacular, kind of like a horror movie, I suppose. It gets your attention for sure, but in the end, it's basically in the spirit of evil, putting your Lord God to the test so that you can use your spiritual power to be pierced by weapons, and that somehow makes you like a good person or a higher grade. The opposite, in fact. And so there are elements of the demonic in Saphah, and they should not be there. This is really ridiculous to put these in. And these are the words you see in this page. This is from Oahspe's Saphah. Of course, Saphah was never in the original. This is a very important point. Oahspe was never in the original. Saphah was never in the originally channeled Oahspe. And of course, if Newbrough had channeled Oahspe, like he said, he'd never put this crap in there. But he needed to have an excuse to make Oahspe into a false religion so that he could be the high priest and achieve fame and glory that he certainly would not deserve, and which he would lead others unto ruin and heartbreak, which he certainly did. So I like the AI pictures because I don't think people understand. You read the words and you go, oh, that's really strange. It doesn't seem normal. It's weird. But when you create the image, it's horrifying. It's even more horrifying because it's like, what in the heck is going on here? Why has Newbrough turned the culture of Oahspe that is basically angelic into something that is demonic? And it's a really horrendous thing to have done. And if you ever wonder why Oahspe's never been become a major spiritual movement with millions of followers, this is one of the reasons. People see these words and they say, this is witchcraft. I'm getting out of here. This is demonic. I don't want anything to do with this book. And I've seen people in my own, I've tried to introduce Oahspe to a number of people. They see these words, they read them and say, this is not from the Creator. And then they say, I don't want anything to do with this book. And Bulldog is probably one of the most extreme examples, and it's really disgusting. I hate to even speak about it, but I'm drawing your attention to it because this is what the words basically can be used to generate such images and such reality. And why is it in Oahspe? It's hard to say. I mean, you have to remember Newbrough is being controlled by the hellish regions, in particular the Masonic hellish regions, and they go in for horror. They really do. And you'll notice in all the movies today, there's all this fascination, this lust for horror and for bloody, terrible things that can happen. And that's what hell is like, basically. There are hells of torture and extreme gore and violence. It even mentions in Oahspe mentions this, that there are hells like this and people are drawn to it. And because that's what people could be drawn to, there's no reason at all to lead people to think about this stuff. I mean, I'm not saying people read these words and stuff and suddenly become possessed by demons. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we don't need to, Oahspe path does not need to be associated with this at all. Of course, a few people have gone crazy in the Oahspe movement because they took these words more seriously than others have. But the main detriment has been that when potential members of the Oahspe spiritual path liked a lot of what they heard, what they read about Oahspe, when they see these words, it's all over. They'll reject the whole thing just because they have this demonic crap in it. And it goes on and on, drinking blood and eating human flesh, and it's really disgusting. And again, people read these words because they're in the book of Oahspe, and it's basically sabotaging Oahspe. It's vandalizing it. And that's what Newbrough did. There's no way this was in the original Oahspe. I know it's because of what the rest of Oahspe is so great. A lot of people can't wrap their head around the fact that someone could have sabotaged Oahspe in the beginning. But if you look at all the facts, if you look at how Newbrough couldn't even get his story straight about how he channeled it, which proves that he didn't channel it, when you look at the fact that he's a Mason, who are into this kind of stuff, at least at the very top elitists, and I'm not saying all Masons are terrible people, I'm saying that the people at the top are terrible people, and Newbrough is certainly that, at the top. So, anyway, I have a feeling that was one of the possible benefits of, at least according to the bad spirits in the lower realms of hell. You know, we can ruin the Oahspe book. We can keep people from wanting to even understand it by putting something that would repel them. So once they see these horrible things in Oahspe, say, this is demonic, I don't want anything to do with this book. And that is what's happened in many cases. We have to stop kidding ourselves. I mean, a few of us have been able to overlook this stuff and say, well, we'll just concentrate on the good message of Oahspe. And that's great. It's really great. But only a few people can do that. And Newbrough is basically poisoned Oahspe so that only a few people can access it when it could be a great power in the world to help everyone. And it really behooves the world and the faithist movement to just go ahead and purge Saphah from Oahspe and have a fresh new start. In this way, we won't have all these negative connections on the soul level, which leads down into the lower depths of hell. And also, it won't be mentally connecting mortals with their focus being mistakenly placed on strange rites, crazy symbols, obscure symbols, studying such things, working through a master initiate system of spiritual progression, when that's all very much against what Oahspe teaches. We need to basically love one another and help all those who are in need of help. Once again, this video is being made to rebuke John Newbrough's claim that Saphah is the most important book in Oahspe. This ridiculous claim is meant to pull all the Oahspe readers into the great dark vortex of his rituals and mind-controlling symbolism, with himself as the head false high priest of a new false religion fashioned after the Masons, where there are masters and initiates and direct communication with the Creator is de-emphasized. I'd like to read one passage from Bog on God now to emphasize the horrors therein. Thereupon the Master taketh the strips of flesh and eateth thereof, and handeth of it to the initiates, saying, This is the flesh of my body, eat ye of it in remembrance of me and of Bog on God. For in my blood and the flesh of my body have I established the Essa Ogao Hoi over all the world. Thereupon the initiates take the flesh and eat thereof. Cohen, the chief priest, on this tablet write your names in blood, and by these bones and skulls swear ye. This is disgusting. This is nothing close to what Oahspe advocates. It's simply abhorrent. We're supposed to be vegetarians, according to Oahspe. Here we are eating human flesh. And the angels don't want this in Oahspe. Not even there's just no reason. It's crazy. The false god Oahspe is a very curious case in that I could not find any research ever identifying this false god, and of course almost all the false gods in Saphah, but not all, are well known. But this is a case of one which is not well known, and in this rite the person who's being initiated is buried as if they were dead, and they'll be brought back to life, and the angels will help them rise from the grave according to this rite. And it's really a disgrace, because calling upon our Creator to resurrect the dead, or to deceive ourselves that because someone can lie alive in a box for a few days, that means they're resurrecting themselves, is just a bunch of hooey. And again, it's form over substance. It's trying to be miraculous, as if that was the purpose of spirituality. No matter how many miracles you could create through your own powers of spirit, and certainly that is possible, this is simply a way of grandizing oneself rather than seeking to achieve good works through love and works of kindness. And that's what Oahspe teaches. It doesn't teach this. There's no need to do it. It's really sad that Newbrough would have all these rights, but the Masons have these rights. I mean, it's all a mirror of that. And many people read this and think it's crazy, so they stop reading Oahspe. As I was saying, there were some texts, and I've said this in other videos, that were originally in Saphah that were channeled. It's a very small portion. There's probably like 2 or 3 pages at most. And there are some other good texts in Saphah which describe good works and are very harmonious in nature, and those are good. I'm not saying those should be taken out. How they got there, since Saphah deals with the history of languages, is hard to understand why. It was like they were just plopped in there. I think it's a common ruse by those who are attempting to deceive others to say that, well, if I put something good here next to my lies and my monstrous words, then people say, well, these words are good. So in this portion, so that means whatever I put in it, which is a lie, deceptive, and horrendous, that means the people who read this, they'll say, well, this must be good and true too. It's a very common propaganda technique. You should not be fooled by this. I would say that by far there are far more texts in the rest of Oahspe concerning doing good things. In fact, the rest almost is all pretty much that way, advocating doing good things for the world. So it's very important to keep in mind that either the texts were taken from original parts of Oahspe not published and put into, just dropped into Saphah, or Newbrough simply paraphrased the meaning of those words and put them in there. But there's definitely the other parts of the text are pretty horrendous and mind bondage kind of words that only a cult would want in there. Thank you for listening. May the Creator bless you always. Hello, dear seekers of truth and light. This